Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to another Reaper blog tutorial. Today we're looking at the changes in Reaper 5.90. I'm only covering about 40% of the changelog here. It's a big update, but there's not a lot of things that are really good to show, and the last few updates have been like that. We're not getting things that are really visually interesting, really workflow changing, like spectrogram editing or something like that. But this is all really important stuff and things that will improve performance, improve compatibility, improve workflow on kind of a smaller level. Before we get into the changelog, let's just address some of the kind of rumors and things that have been going on. There's a lot of speculation about Reaper 6 coming out soon. There has been no information given to users on the forum. Traditionally, there has been at least 6 months of beta testing. For example, in December 2015, that's when the beta for version 5 came out, and that wasn't released until August of 2016. So a long period of beta testing, making sure that all those new features were right. We haven't even gone into that stage yet. And I say we as in the users, not as someone that works for the company, because I don't. So you guys can stop asking me, because I don't know. I will know at the same time that you know. And I don't think that there's going to be any big surprises. We're going to see a long beta period before it's actually released. So there you go. Let's go on to the changelog. First thing I'll show you is automation items allow pasting points into existing items. First, I'll switch over to Reaper 5.80 to show you this, how it is different. So if we have an automation item on this track, like that, and let's just put some stuff in here. And I've got an envelope on this track. I've got that selected. If I hit copy and then go to this automation item, and I'll move my cursor there just in case, I hit paste, it's actually gone behind the item. That's not supposed to happen. So back to the latest version, same situation, volume envelope. I'll have an automation item here. I'll have some automation here. I can copy that, put my cursor here, paste, and that's gone into the automation item, not the envelope underneath. Makes perfect sense. It's a really simple thing that's going to save a lot of time and hassle. All right, so next is clear old point selection when duplicating points via mouse modifier. All right, so let's first look at the mouse modifiers for this. So that's in preferences, editing behavior, mouse modifiers. Going to envelope point, left drag, and we're looking for copy envelope point, ignoring snap. So shift command option, and we're going to drag some envelope points. So I'm just going to draw that in like that. They're already selected. I can hold shift command and option and drag some points and duplicate them. But notice that the original points are still selected. And so if I drag any of these now, they're all going to move. They're all going to be at a time, things like that. If I do it again, it just keeps getting worse. So into the new update, and we'll set up the situation to be the same. So we've got some automation here. Same mouse modifier, shift, option, command. That would be a shift, alt, control on Windows. And you drag it, and the original envelope points are unselected, and only the ones that you dragged actually are selected. So again, it's a very simple change. It makes more sense. It's going to save time. Here's an interesting thing from the changelog. Paste, fix paste with more than 32 empty tracks between items. This bug has been undiscovered for about 12, 13 years. So it goes back to when copy and paste was originally added to Reaper. So a really, really long time. So I'll just add in a couple tracks here, and I will put in just empty MIDI items. I'm going to select the first track and then go to insert menu and then multiple tracks. I'm going to add in 32 tracks after the last touched track. So after track 1. So I've just put in a gap of 32 tracks. All right, we can see them all now. I think. Yeah. So I'm going to select these two items, copy. If I move my edit cursor and then hit paste, I'm still on track 1, right? We expect it to go to track 1 and 34. Hit paste. It's actually pasted it to track 1 and 33. You know, that's not going to come up that often, but it has come up, and yeah, they fixed it. So same situation. I'll just take all these tracks, copy, go to REAPER 5.90, paste in those 34 tracks. I'm going to select all, copy, and put in, I'll just paste again. Same situation as before, only is going to take those items and put them on the correct tracks. So I just thought that was interesting because that bug has gone undiscovered for so long. So pretty cool. Here's a bug in the render window. When you save all settings as a preset, the dither and noise shaping options haven't been saving with it. So if I go to all settings and load my master's wave preset, the dither and noise shaping toggle actually correctly applies there now. Next is a series of updates to live effects multiprocessing, and I have the preferences windows open here. On the left is REAPER 5.80 with the default settings, and on the right is 5.90 with my customized settings. I don't see anything different here in terms of preferences, but these changelog items relate to how these things work. So I'll just read them off here. Improve performance with folder tracks that have PDC. Process receives similar to folders. Remove old logic for reducing worker threads when not using anticipative effects processing. So generally speaking, this should give us a little bit of a performance boost when we're monitoring through effects. Next are some things related to performance. These aren't optional, these are just under the hood. Make automatic worker scheduling mode slightly more aggressive, and reduce underruns when repositioning the edit cursor soon after stop. I don't think that's something I can really demonstrate. But yeah, that should just be, better performance, fewer dropouts, things like that. So now I'm going to try to explain all the changes with ReaSurround. I'm not a big ReaSurround user. I don't mix and surround at all. There are a bunch of changes, not everything that everyone wants, but it's a step in the right direction. And none of this stuff should break older projects, and I think that's pretty important. So on the left side of the screen, you see ReaSurround as it was in REAPER 5.80, and on the right, you see how it is currently at version 5.90. If we zoom out the interface a little bit, like that, there's a square simulating the virtual room. And if we zoom out on the older version, it's just in this infinite black space. It doesn't seem like a physical space. But having this square here makes more sense. So let's actually put this into a surround mode, and I'm going to set this to the 5.1 surround mode. And the same here. And I'm going to change the input count to 6 and input count to 6 here. So the source arrangement seems to be about the same. The speaker seems a little bit different. There's no overlap here, except for the center and the front left rights. So now if we grab any of these source points, we can use these edit modes to adjust two specific free speakers. So if we just look at the list of available parameters here, some of the new ones are to front left, to front right, to front center, to back left, to back right. So if I take to back left, I take channel 2 and I dial this up or down, it's going to move that source towards a certain speaker, or to a certain speaker. Now in the older version, we don't have those. We have left, right, back, front, low, high, back, left, front, right. It's not the same, not quite as many options there. We also have relative speaker influence, which according to the changelog will, in relative mode, prevent bleed into speakers at opposite edges of the space. In practice, I'm not sure how that sounds. I'm not set up for surround. I believe that's something that people have been requesting. Here's something. If I move this, the edits will be limited to the visible area of the plugin. I can zoom out and I can go further, but not outside of this interface. Now with the older version, if I grab one of these, drag it, it can go off way outside of the interface, which is probably not helpful. This is really cool. So if we take inputs 1 and 2 by shift clicking, and I reverse channel 2, and I drag input 1 around, they'll actually move in reverse directions. So moving left and right will make them closer or farther apart. Up and down will rotate. Pretty cool. And with that off, they move together. So they just move position together. When we're moving these points around with the mouse, we can hold down the control key to override that reverse or mirror edit. So if I have channel 2 reversed here, I can hold down Command on the Mac or Control on Windows, and they will move like they are not mirrored. But if I let go of Control, or I mean Command, they will move in that mirrored option. So that's going to make things a lot more simple. You can, just using that mouse modifier, you can move both of those points around at the same time. Let's do that with, let's take 1, 2, 5, and 6, and we'll reverse channel 6. So holding down commands like that. Yeah, pretty cool. All right, so when you're using the knobs, you use the shift key, that's going to speed up the movement of the knob. So holding shift is like this. Without holding shift, it's like this. Holding down command, it's even slower. So yeah, a bunch of different changes there. There's the modes to go to specific, moving towards or away from specific speakers. There is the per channel controls to reverse or mirror edits. That was down here. There is the relative speaker influence mode here. The mouse modifiers holding down control or command when moving with the mouse. Holding shift for faster edits, holding control or command for slower edits. And then the other things about bleed and restricting the edits to the space. Tons of cool stuff here. If we have the virtual MIDI keyboard and we want to trigger actions, we can use actions that use the shift key, and that will pass through the virtual MIDI keyboard. So the virtual MIDI keyboard, if you're not familiar with it, it takes the typing keyboard and uses that as the piano keyboard, and you can use that as an input on a track. So if the keyboard is focused, you can't usually send actions to the arrange view or to the mixer and things like that. But if you use a shift key in the keyboard shortcut for those actions you want to run, they'll still pass through. For example, I use Shift S to solo the selected track. And so I can do that without taking away focus from the virtual MIDI keyboard. Here are a few new things related to VST plugin compatibility. First is that they've added compatibility setting to flush VST3 buffers with hard versus soft reset. So I guess all plugins are going to be soft reset by default, but VST3 plugins have this compatibility setting hard reset on playback start. So I guess with that turned off, it's going to be a soft reset, and with it on, it's going to be a hard reset. To be honest, I don't know the difference. It's on by default with this plugin and the other ones that I've checked. So I'm guessing that is a good thing. This is something I mentioned in the last video, the what's new in 5.78 to 5.80 video. When forcing VST3 bus channel count, immediately reinitialize plugin I/O. So if I go to the request VST3 bus channel count option and I choose one of these options, if the plugin supports multi-channels, I don't think this one does, but it's going to refresh the plugin. One more fix related to VST is prevent hanging notes when resetting plugins on loop. I did a video recently on hanging notes and a fix for that. Since this recent version, I've gone through and changed some settings. I got some help from Evil Dragon with that. I use these settings now. Reset when sending all notes off, pitch and sustain. I turn off reset on play and turn off stopped seek. In the plugins and VST setting, I turned off don't flush synthesizer plugins on stop or reset and turned off don't send note offs or pitch reset messages on stop/reset. I think using these settings plus this fix in this update has solved all the problems I've had with stuck notes, but that's something that I'm just going to have to do a lot more recording to actually figure out for sure. There are a ton of MIDI editor bug fixes and small changes and improvements in this update. It's some really technical stuff. It's some stuff that I don't entirely understand myself, fixing problems that I never ran into myself, and so it's really hard to demonstrate these things. I know that for a few users, this has made a huge workflow improvement for them, but it's really hard to explain all those little differences that there are between this version and the last one with regards to the MIDI editor. I think this is a good time to go through the MIDI editor and the MIDI editor preferences and make sure that things are working the way that makes sense for your workflow. If you're fighting with something with a MIDI editor, chances are there's a setting that you just need to flip and you'll be more comfortable with it. It'll make more sense. It'll be more intuitive. For me, I'm still in that process of figuring things out. These changes here made me think more about it. And in the process of researching these things that have changed, I ended up finding a bunch of settings that aren't even new in this version of Reaper that I can enable and try out. And it's made a big difference for me. I will quickly show you my preferences for the MIDI editor in editing behavior. Some of the stuff here is new. Some of the defaults have changed for this page. Everyone needs to go and check this stuff and make sure that it is working for their workflow, along with the settings in the actual MIDI editor. I have the MIDI editor docked in the bottom of the window. That works great for me. A lot of people like to have it as a floating window on a secondary monitor. I have it set to one MIDI editor per project with the options for using one MIDI editor per project. These are things that I'm still experimenting with, but for now I just have MIDI item selection is linked to editability. Also in the MIDI editor view menu, look for piano roll time base. I really like project beats. Some people like project time, and a few really weird people like to have source beats turned on. And if you want any more information about this, go to time base help, and there is some documentation here. Project beats makes the most sense for me. One thing I was concerned about switching from one editor per track to one editor per project was that MIDI note names wouldn't be retained. So let me just color this so we can see them differently here. And I'll put in an item. So on track 1, if I double click this item, I'm going to go to File menu and go to Note Names. I'm just going to load in a MIDI note name map, and I'm going to set this to my drum editing mode, which just makes it makes the notes diamonds. It puts in a named notes view instead of a piano roll, and it removes any unused or unnamed notes. And when I switch items on the same track, it's going to also switch that view or retain the same view for that track. That's what you would expect to happen with one editor per track. You might not expect for this to also work with other tracks in the same project. So right now it's switched it over to named notes view, which is not what we want, but it just didn't have any settings saved before. So I'm just going to run my action to set this back to piano edit mode, and I'll put in a chord. major chord like that. And if I switch back to the other one, looks like that. Switch back here. So the view of the items is going to be the same for each track. And so I think it uses the last setting, make a new track, and then yeah, it's going to use the last touched setting for the MIDI editor, which is maybe a little bit weird. Most of the time, you're only going to be using the MIDI note name maps with drum tracks. That's something that's usually best set up in a track template. So yeah, so those are just some of the things that you should look into changing to improve your workflow. Well, you guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about this stuff, not knowing what the hell I'm talking about. I know I am. I'm going to leave you guys here for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon, and visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.